Hi fantasy managers, welcome to FPL Team Talk. Welcome to this new FPL video, which is going to be all about differentials, players that are less than 5% owned by the entire community. I've tried not to pick out just players for the sake of being differentials, but these are all players that I am genuinely considering putting into my game week 1 draft, and stick around for the end because I will look at how they could possibly fit in there and how it would all work out. So as always guys, if you enjoy these sort of videos, please give it a like, support the channel, hit that subscribe button, and in the meantime, let's jump into it. So before we look at these differential players, I'm going to put a bit of a caveat with these. I've chosen 2 defenders, 2 midfielders, 2 strikers. As always, if we can get a differential in our side that hits the ground running, that scores points, the bonus is that no one else or very few other people are going to own him. He's going to be right up there giving you points in front of your mini league, giving you a great start in FPL, which is absolutely crucial. Downside is there is a reason why they're less than 5% owned by the community. Okay, there's always going to be something wrong, there's always going to be a risk with them, and that's what we're going to have a look at and outweigh. Have most people got it wrong, or is it a risk worth taking? So first up is probably the least likely, I think, of the players that I'm going to personally be looking at, and that is Robertson. His fixtures are very black and white. He's got a tricky game, you'd say, away at Chelsea to start with, then into game week 3 against Newcastle. You wouldn't even say Villa at the moment, it's an easy game either, but then Bournemouth at home in game week 2 looks like a game worth targeting. Played 34 games last season, 8 assists. XGI is still decent for a left back, right up there with the very best of them. He's just not a Trent now, who we know now is playing in midfield, but less than 5% of people own Robertson. There's pros and cons, of course, with all of these players. The fact that Robertson is now the all-time leading assist maker for defenders in the Premier League, but at 6.5, he is still quite an expensive player to bring into a Liverpool side. I'm not 100% convinced he's going to be good enough defensively. Fixtures, like I said, they look a bit hot and cold. Is he nailed? I've put a question mark. I think 34 out of 38 games pretty much says he's nailed, but you do have Tsimikas waiting in the wings there, so that's just a little bit of a concern. How's it going to play out with Europe as well? Tsimikas going to play European games, or is it going to be a case of they're going to take it quite seriously and Robertson will be playing him, in which case may he get a rest in the league? We'll have to wait and see. Unsure about that, and that just leaves a little bit of a question mark over a £6.5 million defender, which I can see why would put most people off. In terms of positives, XGI is still really good, 0.27. Game weeks 5 to 11, which we haven't put up here, are really good, and there's no Champions League football, so less likely to rotate, I think. All in all, 6.5 on the watch list. Don't think I'd want to bring him in for game week 1 because of that Chelsea game, but then I don't really want to target making a transfer for game week 2 for Bournemouth either, especially when we've got Newcastle away. So the fixtures in the first 3 game weeks do put me off a little bit. 6.5, little bit pricey, not sure about him. It's a real differential though. If he could get a clean sheet and assist, bonus points, then all of a sudden, wow, what a start. People are going to jump onto him instead of Trent. The other defender that I am considering, plays for Brighton, I'm going to say his name wrong, Van Heck, 4 million, really cheap. Now, he ended the season playing quite regularly for Brighton in that defence, and he has played a couple of pre-season games. XGI is nothing to write home about. It's not bad. He obviously has some aerial threat from set pieces. 0.17 is not bad for a centre-back, but those fixtures look great, and he's less than 1% owned. So he would be an option, I think, for me instead of Estupinian, but it'd be very difficult to justify going him over Estupinian. The price, though, I think will be what determines for me. And the other choice is, will he definitely play? If Colwill does make that transfer, which is being mooted from Chelsea to Brighton, possibly then he will take that spot and Van Hekke won't play. So it's a risk, I think, if Colwill goes. If he doesn't, I don't think he's got a lot of other competition for that centre-back role. Dunk's got one, possibly Veltman. If you're a Brighton fan and you know more than I do, let me know. Game week 3, the fixtures do look quite difficult. And XGI isn't anything to write home about. But he is it's just 4 million. So I think you've got to bear that in mind. The fact that he's just so cheap, and that just gives you enough money to spread around elsewhere. Don't mind benching a defender who's only 4 million too. Game weeks 1 and 3, as you can see, look really appealing. No Champions League football either. So Van Heck, definitely one I'm considering. I think it will come down to how much money I do have left over. Is it going to be Estupinian or Van Heck? So I definitely want a Brighton defender in there. it's very difficult to oust Estepinian unless I can really justify an extra million elsewhere in a squad that I think is going to benefit me. Let's move into the midfielders now, and a few players that possibly were just favourites in the past that we haven't really looked at in recent years. Raheem Sterling. Now, last year was a real up and down season for him. 23 appearances. I think I owned him at the start and he did okay, but as the season went on, he got injured. He was out of favour. Never really seemed to regain the same sort of form he had at Manchester City. 6 goals, 4 assists, and his XGI is still decent. 0.58. That competes with lots of Matoma, Fernandes and De Bruyne. Problem was last year he was much more expensive, so now he's come down in price. He is quite an attractive proposition. Less than 5% owned. The fixtures, first 2 game weeks, you'd say don't look great, but he has started in those games, pre-season games for Chelsea. But with a new manager, difficult to know whether potentially he is going to play or not. So nailed, I've just put a question mark. I'm not sure. Midfield slot as well, they are precious in our size. There's so much competition. Can I afford to bring in someone like Sterling to take a midfielder slot that I'm just not sure is going to play every week? It's a difficult. 7 million is really good. Fixtures look tough the first couple of weeks, but after that look great. On the pro side, Sterling, I think his price is really good at 7 million. So he's quite cheap for what you're getting. The fixtures beyond the first 2 look really good. And there's no European football, so there's no need to rotate. It just, I think, depends how this side ends up panning out and how Pochettino is going to set them out. Is Sterling a big part of those plans? And I think we just need to wait in order for those pre-season games to be played a little bit more, and we can see a little bit more how that side's going to pan out. The one thing I would say about Sterling, last season does put me off him as well, but if we look at his previous record and previous seasons, it just is phenomenal. It is just worth looking at. So the year before when he was at Man City, 13 goals, 5 assists, 10 goals, 20 goals, 18 goals. Look at him at assists and just look at the XGI, expected goal involvement, 0.79, 0.64, 86, 8693. Wow. If he plays and replicates any sort of those figures, wow, 7 million, he's going to be in everyone's side. So that's the potential of Sterling. It's just, is he going to be playing? Where's he going to be playing? How's he going to set up? Sterling at 7 million, though, definitely one on my radar. Difficult to commit to him when he's got Liverpool at home first game, West Ham away, possibly tricky. After that, definitely someone they'll be looking to bring in. Midfielders, and let's look at the next midfielder. And he is another one that I do like, but it is depending on a few other things happening. Richardson, again, 7 million, pretty decent price. Less than 2% owned. Only played 12 games last season, 1 goal, 5 assists, nothing to write home about. XGI 0.48, okay, but he is down as a midfielder this season, whereas he was down as a striker last season. So 7 million for a midfielder. Again, he does take up one of those slots, but I think the whole thing with Richardson is just going to be what happens to Harry Kane. The difficult thing is with him is if Kane plays, I just don't see how he's going to get the minutes. If Kane goes, suddenly they're going to take time, I assume, to line up a replacement for him. Richardson may be that replacement, I don't know. He looks like he's absolutely nailed, I would say, if Kane goes up front, maybe playing alongside Kulusevski back in midfield. But he does take a midfield slot up. XGI isn't the best, but playing up front, possibly taking pens. Wow, if Kane goes, I think Richardson would be a player I'd be really interested in jumping on. Midfielder, he's down on, so those goals are going to be worth more. Fixtures look okay to me. First one away at Brentford, they obviously struggled last year against them. Man U at home, could be better. I think it could be worse. And then Bournemouth, Burnley and Sheffield United look like good fixtures to me. So he's cheap for a midfielder, possibly playing up front. Fixtures look good. If Kane goes, Richarlison, wow, I think he could be a fantastic option and just no one else on him. I'm pretty sure that if Kane goes, people will realise that Richarlison may be the up front option. And people will certainly go up. But Richarlison on my radar if Kane goes. Let's now have a look at those attacking options and 2 players. Those attacking slots, 2 of them already filled in my side, so there isn't much wriggle room. But I am looking at Pedro. His fixtures look pretty good. Now, these are obviously based not on last year's figures, but on the season he was with Watford in the Premier League. 3 goals, 1 assist. XGI, not the best. But he was playing for a Watford side that got relegated, so I think we have to bear that in mind. Very young as well, less than 5%. At 5.5 million, it's a really good budget, cheap option for someone I could just put on the bench, possibly forget about. But obviously now he is playing for Brighton. Is there a risk of rotation? Oh, that is probably the biggest risk with him. You got Under, Welbeck, Ferguson. How does he fit into that? They have paid a lot of money for him, and his XGI wasn't impressive at Watford either. But he is only 5.5 million, so I think that is, all things considered, got to be put into consideration as well, that you're not paying much for him, so he could just sit on the bench as a bit of fodder. Took a penalty against Chelsea in pre-season as well. That was quite interesting, looked really good, and the fixtures for the first 3 weeks looked great. If I had some reassurances that he was going to start, I think he would definitely be on my bench for game week 1 to 3. At 5.5, I think he'd almost be a set and forget. Just depends how much money I've got. But yeah, Pedro looks like a really decent option. I do quite like him. 5.5, don't think there's much not to like. So talking of cheap players as well, if we move on to the final striker that I'm looking at, Calvert-Lewin, 6 million, less than 3% owned. Didn't play many games as we know last season. In fact, I was pretty surprised to see he played 17. 2 goals, 1 assist. XGI is pretty decent, and as we know, he is on pens. So XGI not that bad considering how many games he didn't play, and also Everton just very goal shy. So that is a worry if I'm honest as well. It wasn't a 2021-22, that was last season. Rotation, is it a risk? I think if he's fit, I don't consider him to be a risk. XGI, I think he's still pretty decent, if I'm honest, given how Everton struggle in front of goal as well. So I'm not massively worried about that. It's cheap, he's on pens, and the fixtures look pretty decent. With Calvert-Lewin, it's just going to be injuries, isn't it? Does he get a decent pre-season under him? Is he playing regularly? And can he stay fit? If he stays fit and he was nailed up front for Everton, I think Fulham at home, Wolves and Sheffield United at home, I think those are great fixtures. I think I would be considering him in an Everton side. It's just he feels like there's an injury round the corner every possible moment for Calvert-Lewin. So it just feels like a risk and a transfer I'm booking in later on. On the watch list, yes. At the moment, I'm just not looking any further beyond him unless I got some reassurances that, yeah, he's fit and ready to go. Those are the differentials I picked. Let's just have a quick look at my last draft team and how possibly some of these could line up in it. That's it for this one then. Let me know in the comments below of any players that are under 5% owned that you think we should be considering for our game week 1 sides. In the meantime, I'm definitely going to come back at you with a new updated draft. Only a couple of weeks left now till the Premier League season starts. So make sure you hit that like. Don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, I'll speak to you soon.